Padida Jafari, Jafari Law and Mediation Office. I am the founder and CEO.
Can you tell me about your own mental health journey?
My own mental health journey. Wow, well that's quite a topic. I'm a divorce attorney in Los Angeles and Orange County. I knew I wanted to be a attorney since I was 5 years old, and so I went through all of the schooling. I didn't really know about sort of, narcissistic abuse. I was a divorce attorney, got into a marriage with a narcissist, didn't really know what that meant. And it was about 5 years ago that, looking at social media and things of that nature, I discovered narcissistic abuse for the first time, and I was able to put sort of a label on what I had been through in my first marriage. And it's kind of odd to say that because I was a divorce attorney the whole entire time, 22 years, but sometimes you don't know what you don't know, right? And
Yeah.
then once you see it, then you're like, oh, you have this aha moment and you're like, oh, that's what it was. And so, because of my divorce, I took a little short break. I went to New York City, lived in Manhattan, taught at NYU for a number of years, and I was sort of living this bi-coastal type of lifestyle. And so I went through a lot of different mental health journeys just on my own. Um, and again, I had to take a short little break because when you're a divorce attorney going through your own divorce, it's very difficult to give back to your clients
Yeah.
and advocate for them in such a way that's meaningful for them. So that's why I went into teaching, because it kind of gave me a mental break from the high conflict area and space that I sort of practice in. So fast forward 8 years, I was, single, living bi-coastal New York and LA, and met this great guy. Really didn't trust myself, to be honest with you, Michael. It had nothing to do with him, but I didn't trust my own ability to choose a new mate for myself. I know that sounds strange, but when you have been through abuse, and so much of the abuse was, narcissistic, was covert, was underhanded, you end up not trusting yourself. And so by that point, though, I had gone through years of therapy, individual therapy. I had really gotten my health in a way to where I was healthy. I was viewing the world in a much better way. My body was physically fit, and I determined that I'm going to trust my mom and her decision making and my family. And so it was like I no longer wanted to just rely on what I saw in a mate, but also what my family saw. And then I started my, journey into getting to know my current husband, and we dated for over 3 years before we got engaged. I also recommend that to my clients. And, now I feel super healthy, both mentally, physically, and obviously in my relationship.
And with the divorce, I'm a product of divorce. My parents divorced when I was 8, and it was really contentious. And I think they shook hands once 25 years later. So it was bad. So is there a way for people to have a, I guess, a good divorce?
Absolutely. So, mediation and collaborative law, I don't know if you've heard of collaborative law, is a great way to sort of uncouple in the most healthiest way possible. So mediation is where both parties go to one attorney who basically transcribes and writes everything down, does the forms. The mediator can't give legal advice, but they can sort of have these meetings with the couple, and you know, everything gets drafted and gets filed. And I have seen in those situations that couples do walk away sort of on friendlier terms. We don't want to say friends, because I'm of the opinion that when you get a divorce, you should not be friends, but you should be friendly.
Yeah.
And so the second type is collaborative divorce. And 22 years ago, when I started my practice, this was sort of getting more traction. Collaborative divorce is where each of the parties, so both spouses, have their own attorneys, but they're collaborative attorneys, and they sign a contract that they will not go to court with the attorney that they have, with the collaborative attorney that they have. And the reason why collaborative divorce, I'm a huge advocate for it, is that the client feels like they have someone advocating for them, which is their attorney, but they do a series of meetings where it's a win-win for both of them. And also, you can bring in third parties, like if you need a forensic, if you need a therapist, whatever the case may be, you can bring in those individuals. And if the party decides, you know what, this collaborative process isn't working for me anymore, they can go get a divorce attorney that's a litigator to litigate. But I will be honest with you, the collaborative divorces that I've been involved with, they don't do that. They really want to finish the process. They know that going the litigation route is going to be exponentially more costly. So they say, you know what, I want to resolve this in a collaborative manner.
And then when I was doing my research, I saw something called gray divorce. What is that?
So gray divorce is it's funny because if you think about it, it makes sense. People over 50 and over, they say gray because your hair is gray. And so they call it gray divorce. And we have seen a huge uptick in gray divorces in the last, I would say, 10 years, where as women have become educated and entered the job market, there tends to be more opportunity, right? If you think about the 40s, 50s, and 60s, women worked in the house, right? They were wives and mothers, and they kept the house, and that was sort of society's role for them, at least, I'm just talking about the United States. In the last at least 20 to 10 to 20 years, we see that there's a shift. And like, I'll give you an example. 70% of women file for divorce. And in California, 70% of women file for divorce in California. That is huge, right? And so we see a lot more gray divorces because women are saying, like, look, my children have gone off to college, or maybe they've graduated, and I'm a career-minded woman, and I don't have to put up with his, sort of like, toxic behavior, and I'm going to file for a divorce. And now they're able to do that because they have the education, they have the work, the job, and they're not sort of afraid to file.
For you, how does it feel to be, since it's a touchy subject, how to like put yourself out of the way while people are going through a emotional issue?
Correct. That is such a great question because so I think that I have the temperament
Mm.
And it's like a stoic thing, right? It's like you can't be intimately involved or emotionally involved in your client's case, but you do have to show that you care and that
Yeah.
you're empathetic, but not in a way that is sort of, you know, like enmeshed with your client. So, I had to learn this, right? Like 22 years. I could tell you the first five clients I had, I was emotionally enmeshed in their case. And I was very like passionate and like maybe even aggressive at times because, I was a new attorney and I wanted to show that I cared. That obviously, that strategy is not a good strategy overall because anytime you're negotiating, you have an opposing counsel, you don't want to be so emotional about your client's case. It's taken me a number of years, obviously, to become a stoic.
Yeah.
So it's important to be stoic. It's important to advocate for your client in a meaningful way. You don't want to be emotional because you're not the one getting a divorce, your client is. It's important to set healthy boundaries with your client and with opposing counsel. And, it's sort of like you're juggling all these balls at the same time. I will tell you though, when the cases are mediated or with collaborative law, there's less of that friction. So you can really just be, very stoic and say, look, this is what the law is. This is what the judge may or may not do. Let's come to a reasonable resolution of your case.
And when I was looking at your website, I saw some of the press you've done, and I saw you were a part of a piece on Everybody's Live with John Mulaney, which I love that show. But what is it like getting your message out to larger audiences?
So what I've done is, sort of like, I'll be honest with you, Michael. When we first started 22 years ago, there was the yellow pages.
Yes.
I was going to say don't laugh, but you beat me to it. You're already laughing. So it was the yellow pages. And California State Bar is very clear about no solicitation. So it's not like we could solicit, right? So it was the yellow pages. And once in a while, you'd see like a billboard. That model for marketing has dramatically changed in 22 years. So what we do is we try to reach um, our target, I guess, clients by social media. I'm on, Instagram and TikTok. And then it's, YouTube and all those things as well. I recently launched a podcast called the Narcissist Abuse Recovery Channel. NARC is the NARC is the acronym on Spotify and Apple podcasts. So that's another avenue. I write, a lot, obviously. I contributing author on some, articles. Any which way that helps sort of the community understand that we're out there. We're Los Angeles attorneys. We also have an office in Orange County. You're right. We have to reach different sort of, I don't know what it's called, but like modalities these days because you don't know how someone is hearing your
Yeah.
message.
What do you do to help your own mental health?
That's a great question. So I will tell you that I have a very healthy marriage. I think that is very vitally important. I will tell you that a lot of divorce attorneys have been divorced one or two or three times. But I keep my marriage at the center of everything. Yeah, I'm a woman of faith, so it's God, my husband, and then my stepchildren. I've got three stepboys. They're older. They're in their 20s. Um, I recently took up becoming an equestrian, and so I spend a lot of time, with horses, and that's really helpful for my mental state because when you're riding a horse, you have to be very present and you can't be thinking about, the 100 cases that you have that are ongoing in the background of your mind. So that's really helpful, having those hobbies. My husband and I just rescued a puppy from the LA wildfires. So that keeps me really busy. His name is River, and he's actually on our social media. He's on our website. So I don't know if you saw that in sort of doing the research of our firm. I think it's just important to have mental days when you're taking mental health days. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it better, but there are days literally that I just put away the phone. I put everything away and shut it off and just be mentally present with myself, whether that's walking on the beach. I'm very fortunate that I live in Orange County, like 5 minutes from the beach. So I get to take my new puppy. We go on these long walks as I'm training him, which can sometimes be stressful, but it's really important to take mental health breaks and, just keep that in perspective. I will be honest with you that every so many years we'll have a client or know about a client that has lost their life in the, divorce process or has been, killed by their spouse. And so that really brings it home. Like, we need to take our own mental health breaks because obviously high conflict divorces are very high conflict for everyone, including the lawyer, but also that we have to be really strong advocates for our clients, especially the ones that are going through domestic violence. And I'm sure you know that because you just disclosed that your parents went through a divorce. So everybody involved, including the lawyers, it bears heavily on all of us.
What are some of the things you've learned from your family?
From my immediate family, my husband and my
Yes.
stepchildren.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, Yeah, so my husband also went through a divorce many, many years ago. I think it's been 15 years ago. And he had a very contentious divorce. And, he obviously had these three wonderful boys. And so, when we got together, we had both been 8 years, post divorce. It was important for us to set a different narrative for our marriage. We did not want to become a statistic. You might not know this, but in California, the divorce rate is about 60%, the first marriage, and then 72% the second marriage, and in the 80s for the third marriage. So as a second time, both of us, our second marriage, it was important for us to set a different narrative and standard. And so for us, God comes first. So we lean really heavily on our faith. The second is, and I think this was in our vows, communication, trust, and compromise. And nobody wants to hear the last one. Nobody wants to hear about the compromise one. People think, well, how much of myself do I have to compromise? And that's really the wrong question. The question is, how do we get to a place where we both feel like it's a win-win situation? There are some things that are important to my husband, I'll be honest. It's golf, tennis. And then there's certain things that are important to me, like taking mental health breaks, saying, I'm not available for this because I'm taking a mental health break, right? Communicating in a way that, he understands that. Does he care about my horses and becoming an equestrian? No, but I will be honest, when I said, this is something I want to do, he was the first one that said, let's go get the right clothing because you can't just, do this with sneakers on. So really showing up for each other. That's what I mean about compromise. I don't mean compromising your morals and values. I mean compromising in a way that, like when it comes to hobbies and making sure that it's important to that person, it should be important to you. So that's as my husband's concerned. And then, the three stepboys, just making sure that I'm there as a support to their father. I'm not there as, their friend, right? I'm there to support their father. And, thankfully I've got three wonderful stepsons, but they know that I'm there to support their father. And we have a great relationship because it's a relationship based on respect and trust, not like, oh, let me be your friend and let me like smoke weed with you or vape with you or,
Right.
it's none of that, right? Because that gives them sort of a bad, sort of, to me, a bad role model.
Right.
So I'm there to support their father. And, I've been in their lives for 6 years. So I can't say enough great things about them, but it's important to let their father be their father and their mother be their mother. And you're just supporting the father. I think, Michael, what happens a lot of times, and we get a lot of these complaints sometimes in our social media, is the stepmom is really trying to like set the standard and like, take control, not for any other reason, but sort of like we're doers, right? We want to take control and we want to respond, and we none of that. That's going to destroy your marriage because that's really not supposed to be your role. Your role is supposed to support your spouse.